If you're planning on driving to Disney, there's a lot that you need to know, from the cost of parking to how exactly parking works to getting from your car to the park. It's a long list and we're gonna cover it today, and I'm gonna try and do it as quick and as simply as possible. Of course, we're starting off our day here at the TTC, which is a place that you're gonna need to know about, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. So let's start at the beginning. Now, if you're looking to drive to Walt Disney World, you're not alone. A lot of people drive to Walt Disney World every year, whether they drive their car from wherever it is that they're coming or they rent a car when they get here. Both options are great depending on your circumstances, and both options will get you around. Now, if you're gonna go the route of driving to Disney, you need to know a few things first. First and foremost, if you are staying at a Walt Disney World Resort hotel, you absolutely can drive and park your car at that resort hotel. It does not have a charge. It used to, but that's now a thing of the past, so you can park for free, which is fantastic. Now, if you do park a car and you don't want to drive around constantly, you don't have to. You can absolutely use Disney Transportation. Disney Transportation is free, whether you're staying at a Walt Disney World Resort hotel or not. So that is available to you, especially if you just don't want to drive on a particular day. But of course, whether you're staying at a Walt Disney World Resort hotel or somewhere off property, you absolutely have the option of driving your car to any of the 4 theme parks, Disney Springs, the water parks, or anywhere else on Walt Disney World property. So let's talk a little bit about what that looks like. Now, if you're gonna be driving your car to any of the 4 Walt Disney World theme parks, it's gonna be basically the same process, no matter where you go. So you're gonna follow the signs, which are pretty good, or your GPS to get to that theme park. Once you arrive, you're gonna drive through a toll plaza, pay for parking. If you're staying at a Walt Disney World Resort hotel, you will not have to pay for parking. If you are a Disney World annual pass holder, you will not have to pay for parking, but everyone else will have to pay a fee. Once you've paid for parking, you'll be directed by cast members through the parking lot and toward a parking space. You will then be told which parking space you need to park in, and you will need to park in that space. Of course, there are exceptions if you have a larger vehicle or if someone is parked in such a way that doesn't allow you or your family members to get out of the car, which has happened to me in the past. In that case, just flag down a cast member and they'll assist you. Once you got yourself all ready to go, you've collected your kids and everything that you need for the day, you're gonna make your way into the park. And there are 2 ways that you can go about doing this. You can, of course, just walk yourself, or you can take a tram. I am so excited to report that trams are now back at all 4 of the Walt Disney World theme parks. We have been waiting forever for this to be the case. For the longest time it wasn't, but don't worry, trams are now available everywhere. However, it's important to note that trams don't necessarily start running at the start of the day. So if you're parked really close to the front of the parking lot, you might not have access to a tram, and that's important to keep in mind because even some of the parking that is quite close to the front can still be quite a distance from security, which is your next stop before getting into the park. Now, in most cases, you're gonna go through security, and then right from there, you can walk just a short distance to get to the park's main gate. That's where you're gonna tap your ticket and you're gonna make your way in. But there is one exception to this, and that is Magic Kingdom. When you're visiting Magic Kingdom or you're parking in the Magic Kingdom parking lot, you're going to be dropped off at the Transportation and Ticket Center, which is where I am right now, also known as the TTC. Now here, you're gonna have to get on a second mode of transportation, a monorail or a ferry, in order to get over to Magic Kingdom. You can also walk, but not currently. As of the date that we're sitting here and chatting, the walkway to Magic Kingdom from the TTC is currently closed in some parts, and so you won't be able to make the full loop, which isn't for everybody anyway, but I want you to know that it is available to you, just not right now. Now, we're gonna take a look at the TTC here in a second, and I'm gonna show you what to expect when you're making your way over here. But before we leave the comfort of the shade from the monorail track, I wanna talk to you about parking at some of the other places here at Walt Disney World, and then we'll take a look at the TTC and talk a little bit more about parking as we make our way over to our car, which is currently parked right here. So you remember that process that I mentioned for the 4 theme parks where I said you go through a toll plaza and then follow cast members to where you're going to park? That's only something that you're going to have here at the theme parks. It's not going to be the same at Disney Springs or at the two water parks. So if you're planning on going to Blizzard Beach, Typhoon Lagoon, or Disney Springs and parking in any of those parking garages, it is going to be self-parking and you are going to be able to park pretty much anywhere. The only exception is during busy times of the day, especially at the beginning of the day at the water parks. You will not have a toll plaza to go through. You won't have a toll plaza at Disney Springs either. But when you get into the parking lot, there will sometimes be cast members directing you to where to park. So just keep that in mind for your visit. And also keep in mind that there is no parking fee at the water parks or at Disney Springs. No toll plaza, no reason to pay. All right, with all that being said, let's take a look at what's here at the TTC so you know what to expect if you're making your way to Magic Kingdom. So like I said, this is only gonna be something that you experience when you're driving to Magic Kingdom because you'll be parking in the Magic Kingdom parking lot. But Magic Kingdom isn't your only option when it comes to places you can go directly from the TTC. You can also make your way over to Epcot. So right behind me right now is where security is, and this is where you're going to walk through once you've gone through security. So you've paid for parking, you've parked your car, and you've gone through security so you can make your way to the park. You'll notice that there are a few different options laid out before you. Right here is the Magic Kingdom monorail. If you're headed to Magic Kingdom, this is the monorail you're gonna jump on. And then over here on the other side is the Epcot monorail. And if you wanna go to Epcot, that's where you're gonna make your way. There's also a resort monorail right here off to the left. That's another great option, especially if you wanna go head to the resorts. And let me tell you a little secret. The resort monorail also tends to have a much shorter line, especially at the beginning of the day, than the Magic Kingdom Express monorail. So it might be a good option for you. It depends on the day, and it might take a little bit longer, but I bet it's quicker than waiting in a huge line. If we keep turning to the left, you'll also see a ferry boat. That also makes its way over to Magic Kingdom as well. Now I know what you're wondering, which option is going to be the fastest? It really just depends on the day. There are days where the ferry is right there, you can run straight on, well, never run, but you can walk enthusiastically onto the ferry and then it takes off right away. There are times where the monorail is right here and you can get right on and make your way. It's all about timing, it's all about what's available and what lines look like. Either way, they're both great options. The monorail is air conditioned, but sometimes it's not great air conditioning. Sometimes the air conditioning isn't working, and that can be kind of miserable. But one of the benefits of taking the ferry boat is you have a bit more room, and especially if you're in a wheelchair or ECV, you won't need assistance in order to get on. Now, that's not to say that it's not easy to get on the monorail. It definitely is, but a cast member will need to pull out a ramp and put it down so that you can get on. You can just drive right on the ferry boat. So, very convenient. There are also two bathrooms located here at the TTC. One behind me on that far end right before the ferry boat, and one over here. So no matter what side you're headed to, there is a bathroom available. Now that we've taken a look at the TTC, we have a better idea of what to expect from the Magic Kingdom parking lot. Let's talk a little bit about what to expect from parking lots in general here at Walt Disney World. So, as you might imagine, parking lots here at Walt Disney World are rather large, like massive. But they do have some easy ways for you to get around if you are parked here, especially if you're parked in the back. Disney has trams available. Now, these trams can be pretty great, but like I said, you don't necessarily have access to a tram depending on where you're parked. Today, I'm parked pretty close to the front, so taking a tram isn't really gonna help me because it's gonna drop me off farther back than I'm parked. I'm gonna have to walk anyway. Which, if you're someone who gets to the parks early, like I do, means that you don't have much of a long walk to get back to your car, but it can still be quite the walk. And the same is true not only for here at Magic Kingdom, but for all 4 of the theme parks. Now again, because these parking lots are so big, they are categorized, labeled, if you will, by section and also by row. This makes it easy for you to figure out where you're parked so that you can get back to your car with relative ease. Now in the My Disney Experience app, they do have a feature where it can help you find your car, but you need to open up the app, track it ahead of time, and I just like to take pictures. I like to take pictures of the row I'm in so that I know where I'm parked. So we've covered pretty much the basics of what you need to know if you're planning on driving to Walt Disney World, but there are a few more things that I think are important to know, some tips and tricks if you will, maybe even some questions that you've got on your mind that I'd like to run through with you just real quick. First and foremost, Let's talk about handicap parking. If you're planning on using this type of parking, it's important to keep in mind that while it is very close to the front and it is very convenient, it still is rather large at all 4 of the theme parks. In fact, in most cases, they're about the size of a parking lot at a local grocery store. So it's important to keep that in mind and plan accordingly if you are going to be parking in the handicap section, especially if you have mobility issues. If you are planning on renting a wheelchair or an ECV once you're here in the parks, it's important to know that there's a significant distance between where you're going to be parking, even if you're in that handicap section, and the front of the park, no matter which park we're talking about. This is not going to be one of those situations where you're parked only a few steps from the entrance of the park, like if you were at a grocery store in your hometown or even at a restaurant or something like that. However, it's important to note that there are courtesy wheelchairs available, so you can get a courtesy wheelchair and use that to get you to the front of the park so that you can then rent a wheelchair or ECV. You will need to park your car, go locate a courtesy wheelchair, and bring it back to your car. So that's important to keep in mind. It does require you to go through an extra step. If that's something that you're really going to need, I do highly recommend renting from a third party, but that's a conversation for another day. As I mentioned, the parking lots are definitely hot. And I know there are always people talking about how Florida is hot in general, but the parking lots can be stifling. Between the fact that there is no shade and all of the heat radiating from the vehicles in the parking lots, it's important to keep in mind that once you leave the park, you have quite the adventure to get back to your car. So I always recommend that you prepare yourself for that before you leave the park so that you don't ruin your day simply by trying to trek back to your car, especially if you're planning on park hopping or leaving midday. Especially during the summer months, I like to make sure that everyone in my group either has ice cold water before we leave the park, or I'll even grab a slushie from time to time before I leave the park to ensure that I just have something cold to sip on for that long walk back. I also like to make sure that I have ice cold water waiting in the car for me so that once I do get back to the car, I have something refreshing to cool me down. Speaking of keeping everyone cool, especially if you have little ones, I recommend using the divide and conquer method when loading your kids into the car. And what I mean by that is have one parent get the car started, open the windows, air things out, get the AC going, and have the other parent work on loading the kids in. I know there are a lot of parents out there who want to work on this together because they think that it moves things faster, and in some cases that may be true. But especially when it's hot here at Walt Disney World, it can be a lifesaver to get that AC going, to get the air flowing, and keep everyone as cool as possible. Because this isn't just a matter of being cranky, this is a matter of preventing things like dehydration, headaches, heat sickness, all of the stuff that we want to avoid on our vacation. So divide and conquer, try and get things cooled off while you're also loading the kids, and of course you can go back and help out as well once you get the process started. Again, I do want to reiterate that I think it's really important to make sure that you're all squared away before you arrive to your parking space. So get that sunscreen on before you leave your hotel, get everything squared away before you leave your hotel, because you're gonna bake your kids and your family here in the parking lot. So get that squared away while you're still in the AC and you're still comfortable, and then everything will be much smoother once you park the car. All you have to do is get out and get out of the way, which leads me to another important little detail. There are people pulling in on all sides of you, so it's important to make sure that you are not standing in other parking spots and that your kids are not standing in other parking spots. Cast members do a really good job at trying to remind people to keep an eye out for oncoming cars, but I think that's important to know that that is something you should expect when you park at the Walt Disney World theme park. Someone will be parking right next to you, immediately after you, and the same can be said for behind you. Of course, there are so many other things that I could say, like slow down in parking lots. Keep in mind that kids and family members are wandering through these parking lots trying to find their car. The speed limit in these parking lots is 15 miles per hour, and I highly recommend that you observe that for everyone's safety. And again, mark where you've parked before you leave the parking lot. I know I mentioned this already, but every single time I'm here at the parks, I'm always seeing someone asking their other family members where they parked when they're about to go through security. Get that squared away before you leave the car in the first place. I am telling you, it will make your vacation so much happier. But I think that's about all for right now. Of course, we can keep this conversation going in the comment section. So if you have any other information that you would love to add, or any tips or tricks that you'd like to share with other Disney enthusiasts who might plan on driving to Disney, pop them in the comments down below. Of course, hit that like button if you enjoyed this video, subscribe so you don't miss our next adventure, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye.